It is time for our read-along of Getting Things Done by David Allen. As I said in the video when I was introducing when this was supposed to be for September, before I got sick, I read this years and years ago. This is an updated edition, so it is slightly different than what I read before, which is great. I will say I hope I do this justice. There is so much packed into this book. I don't want to say it's densely written because that kind of implies that it's like difficult, and it's not. It's actually the process that he talks about is none of it's like hard. None of it is impossible to do by any stretch. And he does talk about this in the beginning part of this a little bit. It's the process is very simple, and some of it may seem like, well, duh, because a lot of it is stuff that we do anyway and we don't realize it. He's very good at verbalizing those things and like giving examples. He packs a lot in here. So I'm hoping I can do this justice. I know I'm not going to hit every single point because that would be me basically reading you the book, and there is just so much in here. So I'm going to hope that I do this justice. So notes, we are going to start with, find my spot. So in the intro, he kind of leads with exactly what I said I wanted my take on this to be anyway, which was not productivity for productivity's sake, but productivity for the sake of getting the stuff done that we have to do so that we have time and the focus to do and enjoy the things that we really, really want to do, right? So, and that's what he says in the intro is the whole point isn't to work harder and longer to get more done, but to be able to appropriately engage with your world and not be distracted or stressed about what you're not doing while you are doing what you are doing, right? So, and he also acknowledges in the intro that the amount of info in this book might seem overwhelming, and it is going to probably take time to turn these processes into habits, right? If it's not something you're kind of keeping in front of you and remembering to do, then it isn't going to become a habit. So we need to be patient with ourselves and remember that we're not, there's not an upheaval of your whole life going on here. It is simply creating the habit of doing these things. So in chapter one is a lot of support for why this process works. So he says there are 3 key objectives to GTD. The first one is to capture everything you need to get done or that is useful to you. 2, decide what tasks are very next for each one of those things. And 3 is to curate and coordinate all of that so you can do what you need or want to do at any given time. And he talks about the whole point of this is to deal effectively with internal commitments. Okay? So again, that frees up mental space so that when you're doing the things you want to do, like the fun things, part of your brain isn't going, oh, I didn't do that, or I should have done that, or I ought to do that, or because that's taking away from the fun thing you're doing. He talks on page 14, there is a really great list of like the basic requirements for managing commitments. Let me see if that was one I was going to bring up. I don't think it was. I have underlined so much in this book, you guys. Yeah, so the basic requirements for managing commitments. I should have brought a little table over here by me. So he says that managing commitments and doing it well requires that we do some real basic things. Okay, first of all, if it's on your mind isn't clear. So anything that you feel is unfinished in any kind of way, we need to capture that in a trusted system outside of your brain. It's what he calls a collection tool. And it has to be something that you'll come back to regularly and sort through. Secondly, you need to be really clear with yourself about what your commitment is and decide what, if anything, you have to do to make progress toward completing or fulfilling it. And 3, once you've decided all the actions you need to take to get that thing to complete, you have to keep reminders of them in an organized place that you regularly review so that you don't forget, things don't fall through the cracks. Okay, so those are our 3 real basic, kind of high level ideas that he's going to break down here. So the whole point here is to take stuff, right? All of our stuff, all of the inputs and requests of our time and energy and all the commitments that we make, all of that stuff, we need to transform it into what he says is a, quote, clear inventory of meaningful actions, projects, and useful information. So one point that he makes in here big time is this is not about time management. This is about action management, okay? And I always loved I grew up in the 80s, so I always loved the idea of time management and productivity. And, you know, I remember that becoming more of a thing, right, back then. And this is not what that is about. And I think that is part of why this system can work for anybody across the board, regardless of what you do, your season in life, anything like that, because this isn't about time management. If you live a life where you are not, you know, having to manage meetings or managing a team of people, or this is still absolutely a process that will work wonderfully for you. If you are someone who, you know, works in management of some sort, or you have to, you know, you're in charge of a group of people, you're in charge of project management for a group of people, this will also work for you. And I think a big part of why this works for so many different people in so many different areas of life or seasons in life is because it is not about time management. And it's actually really basic ideas put together in a way that makes the most sense. I hope that makes sense, because I kind of feel like I'm not making sense. Okay, so one thing that David Allen does in here is he tackles this. His view on getting this ball rolling using GTD is kind of the opposite of what a lot of productivity systems are, because he takes a bottom-up approach. A lot of productivity systems take a top-down approach. They start with the high level, you know, what are your long-term goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your principles or your values? That kind of thing. And then you start from there and you work your way down. David Allen makes the point that if we deal with the immediate and maybe the mundane things first, the bottom-up approach, that frees up mental space for higher and broader thinking. That tends to be how I naturally work as well. Maybe that's why I tend to enjoy the system so much, is I feel the same. I feel like if we can free up the clutter, right? The kind of mundane, just get it done quick, it can be done quickly stuff, then that frees up space for higher level, bigger, broader thinking. And he also talks about 2 types of action management. He talks about horizontal action management and vertical action management. So horizontal action management just means that we have coherence across everything you're involved in, right? You have, the way I picture it, and I hope I'm verbalizing it the way he means it here, is like I have little piles of stuff, right? Here's all the stuff I need to do at the house. Here's all the stuff I need to do for school. Here's all the stuff I need to do for whatever, right? I have all these little piles, right? And I keep track of all those little piles. Vertical action management is what needs to happen within each of those piles, okay? And then on pages 24 and 25, if you have been around this channel at all, you've heard me say it a million times. Absolutely, this is where I got it from. Your mind is for thinking, not for storage. And that really goes back to that whole bottom-up approach that I was just talking about. If I am keeping all of this clutter in my head that's just mundane, I can get it done quick kind of stuff, and instead of just doing this stuff, I'm procrastinating or I'm doing other stuff instead of that real quick stuff, it's clutter that's still sitting in my brain. It's taking up space that I could be using to think. It's being stored and taking up space that I could be using to think. And that's why I write stuff down, because if I write it down, I'm not carrying it around in my head. And then chapter 2, he gives kind of the overview of 5 steps of mastering workflow. Okay, so I think this is around page 27. So number 1, our first step is capture what has our attention. Number 2 is clarify what each item means and what to do about it. 3 is organize the results, which yields the options that we then 4 reflect on, which we then choose to 5 engage with. So I can understand if you hear that and you think that all sounds overly complicated, but it's actually just a detailed breakdown of what we all do when we want to accomplish something anyway. He talks about this on page 28. He's basically taking something that we kind of intuitively do in our brains and he's verbalizing it. And one thing that kind of occurred to me on this read through of the book is, yes, that these might be steps that we normally take in our own heads without really realizing it, but because he has broken them out by step and kind of made those steps actionable things, it makes us slow down and work through that process. And I feel like if we choose to slow down and work through that process, that cements it more in our brains and it makes us acknowledge each step of it, which I feel then cements the habit of doing the process. And I think that's really important. So don't feel like it's overly complicated, because trust me, you do these things probably without realizing you're doing them. But when you slow down that already familiar process and apply it to every area of your life, you miss fewer things and you begin to build this habit of doing this in a slightly more cognizant way. I hope that makes sense. So our first step here is capturing. So that means gather all of your incompletes. So then he says, okay, well, what does that mean? Gather all your incompletes. What's an incomplete? An incomplete is anything that has a should, a need to, or an ought to attached to it. That's the kind of stuff that sits in your brain and it takes up bandwidth until you park it somewhere reliable. You capture it. So then he talks about, okay, capture it where? There are many capturing tools available. You could use index cards in an index box. You can use pieces of paper in an inbox tray. You can have a notebook. You can have a planner, a section in your planner. Digital tools. There are apps, GTD apps that are available. You can do, a lot of people, if they deal with a lot of digital stuff, they just use Outlook, right? But his whole point wasn't, here is the tool. That's the other reason this process, I feel, can work for anybody, is the tool that you use isn't specific. There isn't something this is the planner you have to use to be able to utilize GTD appropriately, right? Or this is the computer program or app that you need to buy to be able to use GTD properly. No, he doesn't get bogged down too much in what the specific tools are or what the correct tool for you may be. He focuses more on whatever tool it is that leads you to successfully capture stuff, that's the right tool for you. So instead of going into details about, this specific tool or the benefits of one tool over the other, he says, don't worry about that. Can you successfully capture everything in it? And in case you're not sure, here's what successful capturing looks like. He says, every open loop needs to be captured and therefore out of your head. You have to have as few capture tools as possible, and you need to empty those tools regularly. So for example's sake, because I don't really know what anybody else's GTD system is, but I know mine, I have my planner, obviously. I have a GTD section in my planner. That section has looked different over the years. I've used one spread with sticky notes stacked up. I've had a little subsections within my GTD section. I also slightly use digital stuff. I will set reminders, especially if something pops in my head, like while I'm driving or while I'm in the store. I'll real quick set a reminder on myself, if I know I'm going to be back home in 3 or 4 hours and I can deal with that thing that popped in my head, that I'll just set hey, remind me in 4 hours, blah, blah, blah. And I just say enough. Some of the reminders read so funny because it'll be some weird idea or whatever that popped in my head. And I just have to say enough so that when that reminder pops up later on, I remember what I was thinking about. Some of my reminders, sometimes I feel like they read like, if you keep a notebook by your bed, and if you have a dream and wake up and scribble it down and then go back to sleep and then you reread that stuff the next day or whatever, and you're like, what on earth? I know what these reminders mean, but if anybody else were to read them, they'd probably be like, what does this even mean? So my whole point is that's basically it. The only other like capture tool I have is like a file box, and that's more of like reference, tickler file, that kind of thing, which he gets into later. But that's pretty much it, is my planner and like my watch in combination with my phone, because then I'll get reminders for things that I can't just inbox right that second, because let's say I'm driving. Well, I can't very well write something down in my inbox while I'm driving. So step 2, that was all capture. Step 2 is clarify. So on page 37 in here, he has a clarifying workflow diagram. Let me see. I was pretty sure I stuck yeah. If any of you have been around in the planner world at all, I'm sure you've seen the GTD workflow. So the clarifying part of this is the bold stuff. So it's kind of like the center backbone of this. We're not talking about the outer ring of stuff, just the center backbone. So we have stuff, right? We collect it. Let's say you have an in basket that you just throw everything into. We're going to go with that example because that's the example that's in the book. So once a week, let's say you're going to go through all the stuff that you threw in your basket. Well, what is it? Is it something that's actionable? Yes or no? If it is actionable, well, what's the next action? Will it take less than 2 minutes? If yes, just do the thing now. If it won't take less than 2 minutes, then your options are to either delegate that thing for somebody else to do, or to defer it. Okay, and then he starts getting into, once you followed the flow chart down there, you're getting into the outer ring of stuff, and we're not there yet. So just clarifying what this stuff is. And it might sound, he even says, this is not a dumb question. Like, we've talked about stuff. And so he's talking about whether it's you write stuff down on your daily page in your planner every day. At the end of the day, do you go through that thing real quick and decide, okay, what's all the stuff I jotted down? Do I need to do anything about any of it? Basically that idea. So that's clarifying. It's just, what is your stuff? What needs to be done with it? Step 3 is organizing it. So that is the outer ring of this. So that is over here, the bold stuff on page 40, I believe. Yes. So he goes into, if it's something that's not actionable, what do you do with it? Well, you either trash it because you don't need it. You have it, either you put it on a someday maybe list, or throw it into a tickler file. So this is holding it to review at a later time. Or it's reference. Like, I used to have a big section in a file box that was like the manuals for appliances and the TV and stuff like that. Like, now I have all that as PDFs. I don't think I have a single manual physical copy anymore. I have it on PDFs in Dropbox. So I suppose that is another, place. It's not one that I refer to often because it's reference, right? I don't do like a weekly review through my Dropbox. I know that stuff is there if I need to find it. So it's basically like my digital filing cabinet. So that is all the no. This is not actionable stuff. So if it is actionable stuff, and it's something that is whatever your next action is it a multi-step thing? Does it take more than 2 steps to do this thing? Those are all things he calls projects. And he lumps everything into projects the same way as earlier into the book he talks about work. When he uses the word work is just anything he wants to get done. It could be stuff at home. It could be stuff at his job. It could be, stuff for a volunteer organization. It could be a vacation you want to take, like just all the stuff you need to get done. And I remember reading that for the first time and being like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I think. And I've never heard anybody else say that before. Everything I need to get done is the work I need to do, right? It's not just the, 9 to 5, the job I get paid for. Everything is the work I need to do. So following that train of thought, projects are things that take more than one step. And he talks about a project, the way he defines it, is any desired result that can be accomplished within 1 year that requires more than one action step. So I misspoke. I said more than 2 earlier. And of course, the first question some people might think when they hear that definition is why? Why is that your definition of a project? And he explains it really well by saying, well, if one step won't complete something, we need to have some kind of goalpost set up so that something doesn't fall by the wayside. So that would be listing it, say, on your projects page. Because that's going to get reviewed every week and you won't forget about that project. And then the other question is why within a year? And he says because anything within that time frame that you want completed needs to be reviewed weekly for the same reason, so it doesn't fall by the wayside. So that is, there's quite a bit of talk in here. I am really skimming. If I went through every single point here, like I said, there is so much packed into this little book. So I am skipping quite a bit, trying to just hit the high points. So continuing with organizing, we have our next action categories. So where do you put your next actions? Once you have an open loop and you have a next action, well, you can put it on your calendar. If it's a time-specific action, a day-specific action, or day-specific information, that goes on your calendar. Other next actions can go onto next action lists, divided into separate lists if that's necessary. Like I have, just for an example, I have just my inbox, which is honestly not an inbox the way he defines an inbox. My inbox is basically a running to-do list. I have a waiting for list. I have a follow-up list, a contact list, a to-buy list, which is not like groceries and stuff like that. That's like bigger things we need to buy or put money into, like for the house. And then a projects list. So that is my, 5 or 6 next action lists. We just talked a little bit about the non-actionable items, the stuff that you really can't take any action with. You know, do you throw it in the trash? Does it go into a someday maybe list or file? Some of your next actions might just be reference stuff, like I was talking about. Okay, this is not how it happens anymore, but let's say, okay, we got a new TV. I should probably, just in case we need it, download the user manual for it, and I'll throw it into the appropriate folder in Dropbox so that I have it if I need it. So that's just reference. And then, as I said, a waiting for list. If I have some project going on and I am at a step where I can't move on in that project until I get a certain piece of information from somebody and I've already contacted them and they know I'm waiting for it, that is something that goes on my waiting for list. I am waiting for someone else to be able to move that project toward completion. I should have brought my water with me. Step 4 is reflect. That is your weekly review. That's where you're going to gather and process all of your stuff. You're going to go through your system, update your lists, migrate forward any tasks that didn't get done, or maybe they're tasks that aren't going to get done right now and they need to go onto a someday maybe list or back into a running task list, for the month or whatever the case may be. The way David Allen puts it is every week you need to review your stuff so that you can get clean, clear, current, and complete. And then step 5 is engage. So that is just choose what to do when. He gives several different models for making action choices. Sorry, we've got a gnat. He gives several different models for making action choices. I won't go through them all. The one that I personally, and I'll just use this as an example because maybe some of you can relate, the one I tend to lean toward the most just kind of naturally is the 4 criteria model. That is, I choose next actions based on context, time available, energy available, and priority. So context would be like, let's say there's something I need to do and I need my laptop to do it. Well, I'm currently sharing my laptop with one of my older kids. So if let's say he's not home, so I have the laptop available, that would be a good context in which that's probably the stuff I should be working on while I have the laptop, right? I don't want to leave that stuff until the laptop has left and gone to college with him for the day. And then I can't work on that stuff because I don't have the laptop. So that's your context. Time available is pretty simple. It's okay, I know this thing I need to do is going to take me at least half an hour. Right now I only have 10 minutes. So I don't have the time available to do that task. What task can I get done in the 10 or 15 minutes that I have available? Some people do even keep either a section of a task list or just a whole running task list of like tasks under 10 minutes or tasks under 15 minutes, where they know if they have that little snippet of time, that's the list they go to and start ticking that stuff off in the amount of time they have. The third one is energy available. That is just if I need to do something that I know is going to take a lot of mental energy and I know I'm exhausted, it's probably not the right time to do that task. Or conversely, let's say I've been sitting for a long time working on something and I know I need to get up and move around. Well, that would be the time for me to do the tasks that are like run down to the laundry room and switch the laundry around, hang up the dry laundry, or and fold whatever needs to be folded and run and put that away. Maybe put some dishes away, sweep the floor, go for my walk, that kind of stuff. If I know, so that way I'm working on something, I'm sitting for a long time, I know I need to move around, so I'm kind of getting two birds with one stone, right? I'm getting those tasks done because I need to be moving around, and I have the energy available to do it because I've been sitting for a little stretch and I'm starting to feel like I want to move. And then the last one is priority. Obviously, if there's something super important that absolutely has to be done today, I need to do that thing today, right? Okay, we're getting there, guys. Chapter 3 is about project planning. This is another one, like I've said before, I am skimming the surface here, okay? There's a lot here. So project planning, he basically gives 5 steps of project planning: defining the purpose and principles, outcome visioning, brainstorming, organizing, and identifying next actions. Now that, again, all might sound like it's overcomplicating or that it is very complicated. It's really not. He gives an example in the book of planning a dinner out. These, again, are steps that we do naturally. He is just putting them into words, breaking them down step by step, so they're very clear, delineated steps. So step 1 is the purpose, which is basically, why do this project? And the nice thing about this is it defines what is successful completion of this project. What does done look like? Okay? If you don't know where you want to end up, you're not going to start very well, right? So it's good to know, what does this project look like when it's done? That sets the criteria for the decisions we're going to make. It aligns our resources, it motivates us, it gives us focus, and it opens up our creative thinking, because we know what done is supposed to look like. And now we can go, okay, do we have the resources to get there? How can we get there? Let's think of all the ways that we can't get there, and we can't, kind of flip that when we get to brainstorming on its head. Well, what are the ways we're not going to get to that, or the things that won't work for that? Because that does help you think better about the things that will get you to done. Step 2 is vision or outcome. That's the what. That is basically the blueprint of the final result. Step 3 is brainstorming. That is capturing your ideas. There are a million ways you can do it. You can make a list, you can make an outline, you can make a mind map. This is basically just capture all of your ideas. This gets a little bit into that extended mind concept that we talked about a little bit near the end of our read along for the notebook, A History of Thinking on Paper. This is, getting things out of your head onto paper, because sometimes that act of physically writing things down can help you branch off into other things and maybe have other ideas that you wouldn't have thought of if you're trying to hold all the ideas in your head. Your brain is for thinking, not for storage. So get the stuff down on paper so you can continue building on what you've already thought of. Step 4 is organizing. That's what's the plan. What is the plan to get this project to complete? What are the steps? If you're working in a group, let's say, okay, here's the marketing we need to do. Here's the budget we need somebody to put together. Here's it, whatever. I'm clearly not a manager. Because then step 5 is next actions. And that's, okay, within this category of things in this project, what is the next thing I can do to get this step done? And that takes us to the end of chapter 3. So that is the intro through chapter 3 of Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. It's the updated edition by David Allen. Next Sunday or Monday, I will be posting the next section of this. I will put the schedule into the description box down below, because I should have done an intro video before this, and because this didn't happen in September like I wanted it to. But the way I'm thinking, the same schedule still applies, so I will make sure that is in the description box here as well. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. If you want to let me know if you had any aha moments while reading this first portion of this, throw them down in the comments. I would love to hear them. There is a lot here, but he really does a good job of breaking things down and explaining them and making it not overcomplicated, but also not overwhelming. So I will talk to you next week. I hope you have a great week up ahead, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.